Hello everyone, my name is Akal and I am a somatic therapist as well as a man who works with men on how to understand, transform, and how to relate to sexual energy. So, to this final video in this progression, that again is dealing with male sexual sovereignty, is let's say you've made it through. You've started practicing disciplines, you're making choices, you're feeling more authentic, you're feeling more manly, more masculine. You've obtained what I call the natural man, the innate man, the man who understands horny as a pressure, understands that there's a choice to make about ejaculation. Then you may want to consider the final part of this progression, which is how do you spiritualize this energy? It's doing it anyway. I mean, the bottom line is when you start practicing these things, there's, again, in Taoism, they talk about this progression of Jing, which is like the raw form of sexual energy. It converts to, and well, again, this raw form of sexual energy is most of the time, this is where most of us function. Raw form of sexual energy rises, we discharge it, done. And then it has to start to build again. Every time you discharge, you have to start to build it again. So you never really get past the sort of raw part of this sexual energy. It doesn't transform into, I guess, greater sensitivity. Sorry, I'm like squirming, my foot cramped. So the greater sensitivity, as we become more sensitive, as we start to utilize these disciplines, etc., the beautiful thing is this, is that Jing will eventually turn into Qi. And again, we already have Qi going on too. I'm not saying this is, again, a very linear process, but it kind of is. So as you become more sensitive, you become more connected to the body, you start to feel subtlety. You can kind of feel how this energy is not only just like, again, sexual energy is not just settled like water around the sexual organs. You can feel it throughout your entire body. So once you start to kind of refine that energy, this is when you can start to achieve multiple orgasms as a man. And I'm not talking about ejaculation orgasms. I'm talking about these implosive, pleasurable feelings that rise up. You can have, I give myself 50 to 100 every day. I'm not kidding you. And again, these are not, don't think about the kind of orgasm you have when you ejaculate. It's different. But it's little pleasurable, whoop, whoop, whoop kind of feelings, right? So now I couldn't do this 10 years ago. I couldn't do this 15 years ago. At no point in my life was I able to do this until I started to practice discipline. I started to make choices. So now the final step of this refinement process from Jing to Qi is Shen. So Shen is generically, we'll just describe that as spirit. So spirit, again, is this idea that you've achieved this union. Again, yoga means to yoke. It's the mind, the intellect, all this kind of ego personality. You go through kind of an ego death progressively. When you meditate, as you meditate more and more and more and more, and you become, I guess, more present and more present and more present and more present, you start to realize that the ego is essentially a pattern. Well, it's a whole bunch of patterns, rather. And so, is that your true nature? Is your true nature a bunch of patterns? No. Why? Because the patterns are impermanent. The patterns don't, they don't exist in the long term, right? They're transient. They change. They're always changing. So what's permanent? This is when you achieve Shen. You not only are practicing all these sexual energy disciplines, but you get to the point where you're connected to spirit and you merge with spirit. You find union with spirit. You yoke with spirit. Then you start to understand your true nature, who you truly are, which is consciousness itself, is presence itself, and you become whole. Think about all the sort of new age talk around holistic or becoming whole and this and that, whatever. And a lot of these things are actually, a lot of like new agey programs and a lot of sort of spiritual programs are always about dealing with traumas. Why? Because trauma freezes us in time. It freezes us in time, and it doesn't allow us to feel whole because traumas are stored. And as long as we're storing something, it's going to continue on a loop. And then we become overly engaged in what it's that spin, that loop that's going on, and we become disconnected from the form. So it makes it more difficult to achieve that union with spirit. So that's the first part that one should understand if you're interested in the spiritual progression here. So something else, again, this is just sort of practical, and this will aid you in that path, which is the idea of cool arousal. I did a video on this, on cool arousal, that goes into more detail, so I'm not going to go into tremendous detail here about this, but the idea of cool arousal is I'm allowing myself to naturally be aroused, meaning I'm aroused by what rises. I'm aroused by the opportunity to make love. I'm aroused by my partner presenting herself as ready to make love. Other words, I'm not seeking and looking to get high, because horny is high. I like being high. I really do. I'm not talking about drug kind of high. What I'm talking about is horny. Horny is literally high. When I feel horny and I'm like, let's say I've retained my sexual energy, I have not ejaculated in 2 months. I feel unbelievably clear. I feel high, I feel alert, I feel vibrant, no brain fog, and I never get sick. I used to get sick all the time. When I was ejaculating all the time. I mean, I would get colds 3 or 4 times a year, cold sores, fever blisters, weird stomach flu-like symptoms all the time. Like, I was always sick. My diet, by the way, was awesome. So that wasn't the reason. My exercise program was awesome. That wasn't the reason. The reason had to do with the fact I wasn't dealing with my mental, emotional baggage. I became very tight and controlled. And the other problem was I was discharging my sexual energy all the time. Again, that foundational energy, which is important and it's connected to your entirety of your being. All functions of your body are essentially sexual in nature. So understanding that cool arousal is you allow life to arouse you. It gives you an opportunity every time this happens. And I always use the same. So here's the trick. I've said this literally in like 5 other videos. I've given the same technique. Now we always use the exact same example because I'm not that creative apparently. So the example is this. You're in the grocery store. You're in the cereal aisle. You're looking at a box of cereal on the shelf. Something nice walks by. Somebody's got a nice butt. You look. Woo! You get that quick, like, horny feeling, right? Quick pressure rises up. And this is the opportunity. You can transmute that energy in that moment within 5 to 10 seconds. How do you do that? Again, first off is you got to be interested in transmuting that energy. You got to be able to connect to it. So meaning you can feel it in your body. So the first thing you do is this. You draw your awareness inward and you feel. Where am I feeling that in my body? Oh, I feel that in my pubis. Inhale, deep breath. You relax your pubis. Again, connect to the feeling. Then what you can do is this. You contract your anus, your perineum, your genitals, pull in your belt line, and that's called mula bandha or root lock. Then you exhale, and you squeeze those muscles, not super, super firm, gently contracting your pelvic floor. And then if you can take this to the next level, which is the next level of feeling and sensing, or if you're good at visualization, which I am not, what you can do is you can feel and sense or visualize the energy rising from below the belt line. So about two fingers below the navel, rather, at the belt line. You can imagine energy radiating out like a star from that point. It goes to your legs, your hands, and your head. Radiates out like a star. And then what you do after that, you inhale, exhale, you go about your day. And you can do, I've done this 3 or 4 times in one particular visit at a grocery store. Springtime can be a little intense. So if I go to the grocery store in the spring, I have to do this, usually a few times. But again, the point is that I can do this with my eyes open. I can do this with my eyes closed. It takes 5 to 10 seconds. It's not a big deal. So, because what am I doing ultimately here? Ultimately, what you're doing is you're increasing your spiritual pressure. And for those of you who are watching this video that are interested in spiritual progressions, the spiritual pressure is what it's all about. So if you're conserving the sexual energy, you're going to get more spiritual pressure. If you practice fasting, meaning you're not wasting this energy excessively through being, gluttonous, because it requires a lot of energy actually to get the energy from food. It's not like a really efficient process. It truly isn't. So, and each time you do one of these things, again, you stay hydrated. That's another one that increases the pressure. Through meditation, you're less anxious, you're calmer, you're doing breath work, your diaphragm is not moving around a ton. And as long as your diaphragm's not moving around a ton, your mind isn't moving around a ton. What's that do? That increases the spiritual pressure because you're not spinning on anxiety and worry. Anxiety and worry will drain you. Those of you, I'm very prone to worry. So what ends up happening is that if I have a day of like intense worry for whatever the reason is, it feels like I ran 5 miles and I'm not a good runner. So these are the things you need to keep in mind. If your ultimate goal is to progress towards this extraordinary man, this man who wants to advance and progress this energy, do your yoga, meditate, qigong, tai chi, whatever it is you got to do to bring you closer to feeling and sensing, to connect you to that energy and how that energy is flowing. Practice sexual abstinence. Be responsible with how you're consuming food. Don't work out too hard, but do work out. Again, there's a lot of things that you can do in order to increase this. So with all that said, I appreciate you watching this video, and hopefully you've watched the previous 4 videos too. So I appreciate you if you watched the whole progression. Thank you much.